Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ovarian Cancer Australia's Teal Ribbon Parliamentary Breakfast 2021, coming to you from Parliament House here in Canberra. My name's Jane Hill, and I'm the CEO of Ovarian Cancer Australia, and I'll be your host for today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting today, the Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. Now, we have some very special guests today, and first, the many women that are affected by ovarian cancer that are here in our audience in Canberra and also tuning in throughout Australia. We give you a very special welcome and we stand for you. And we've also got some special guests here in Canberra. We've got the special guest speaker, Delaney, her husband Kevin, and her lovely family here. And you'll hear Caitlin's personal story a little bit later. We have the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison, the Health Minister, the Honourable Greg Hunt, who'll join us shortly, Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Mr Anthony Albanese, Jed Kearney, who's representing the Shadow Health Minister, the Honourable Mark Butler, Chair of Ovarian Cancer Australia, Marina Go, and our parliamentary friends of ovarian cancer, Dr Katie Allen, Meryl Swanson and Sarah Hanson-Young, and also our partners, parliamentarians and all of our supporters that are joining us today. We thank you so much for your support. Firstly, let's honour the courageous women who have stood here in previous years, translating their courage into action for ovarian cancer. And we feel that their advocacy and their support has created an enormous momentum for ovarian cancer. Notwithstanding that, however, today and each day in Australia, 4 women will be diagnosed with ovarian cancer and 3 women will die. And ovarian cancer still has a survival rate of just 46%. Whilst these are grim statistics, I've never been more hopeful. There's great momentum and we've made a lot of progress towards the goals of our National Action Plan. And we thank the federal government for the 2-year funding that's been given a couple of years ago for our Teal support program, so that we can provide specialist ovarian cancer nurses to the women that have great need, and they find sometimes they feel vulnerable or alone, and we can be there for them in their time of need. We also thank the government for the dedicated ovarian cancer funding round that we had last year, giving $16.2 million to a range of ovarian cancer research projects. And we also thank the government for creating other opportunities in research, such as the reproductive cancer clinical trials research funding round. All of these things signify a step change for ovarian cancer. We also welcomed the federal government's budget announcement extending the listing of a critical ovarian cancer drug for newly diagnosed women with ovarian cancer, making another treatment more affordable, more accessible for more women. This year, Ovarian Cancer Australia acknowledges a very important milestone of 20 years of supporting women and advocating for them. It's a year to build on everything that we've achieved and to continue the momentum that we're experiencing towards a breakthrough. I'd now like to introduce a special video message from our patron, Nicole Livingston.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Livingston and I'm the patron of Ovarian Cancer Australia. I'm sorry I can't be there today. AFLW commitments have kept me away from Canberra. This year I'm proud to be reflecting on a moment of our history, a really important milestone, and that's 20 years of Ovarian Cancer Australia. It's incredible to see just how far Ovarian Cancer Australia has come since very humble beginnings in 2001, which I was a part of, to becoming the leading organisation providing support for women living with ovarian cancer. I got involved with Ovarian Cancer Australia because my mum was diagnosed with it in the late 1990s. We didn't know anything about ovarian cancer, nor did she, and we thought that that was wrong. Since we set out to raise awareness and support for women all those years ago, it's been so great to see how far we have come. People now know about ovarian cancer and, importantly, the symptoms and signs. That's why it's so important for us to acknowledge this vital milestone throughout 2021. Although we still have a long way to go in improving the survival rates, we have real momentum, and that makes me hopeful that in 20 years' time, we're going to be sitting along our pink sisters, and you know what I mean, reaching high levels of survival. Please support us to save the lives of women and ensure that no woman with ovarian cancer walks alone. We've come a long way since 2000 when we took to the park with Sheila Lee to have a public rally, to now being a very much part of a public face of ovarian cancer and making a real difference. So please support Ovarian Cancer Australia and let's make a difference.
Thanks, Nicole. And we all know that 2020 was a year like no other, and during the COVID-19 pandemic, calls to our helpline, which is staffed by our ovarian cancer nurses, doubled. And at the same time, our leadership in advocacy and supportive care was recognised when ovarian cancer was named the Organisation of the Year in the HESTA Nursing and Midwifery Awards. So we do know that there's so much more that we need to do to change the course of ovarian cancer. So today's about coming together to give hope and a promise of action. Together we can achieve Ovarian Cancer Australia's vision to save lives and that no woman with ovarian cancer walks alone. I'd now like to introduce Delaney. We're so thankful to Caitlin for sharing her personal story, and I want to preempt that it could be a little confronting to hear. Please welcome Caitlin.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to speak today and hearing my story. Breakfast with the Prime Minister is among one of the few but very distinguished positives about having stage 4 cancer. The others are loads of attention, priority parking, more Pilates and massages than you can ever imagine. On the outside, I'm essentially living like a Hemsworth. On the inside, however, I feel like a dead woman walking. I consistently have a foggy brain, chronic nerve pain which makes walking difficult, and digesting food is terrifying. All this thanks to the cocktail of very expensive drugs I am on, which I guess makes me less Hemsworth, more Keith Richards. I have a rare and nasty variant of the deadliest cancer on the women's menu, stage 4 clear cell ovarian cancer. I have no known risk factors and no obvious cancer in the family. I was diagnosed exactly 4 years ago, aged 39. My children were tiny. I plunged into grueling chemo and surgery and maintained cancer-free status with the help of PBS-funded Avastin, which saved me $45,000. But the funded Avastin only lasted a year. I sourced funding for a second year, and as soon as I stopped the Avastin, the cancer came back. It's now all in my liver and lymph nodes. Unfortunately, chemo is not working this time, which means that treatment options for me are running out pretty fast. Due to my rare pathology, I am not a candidate for many clinical trials, nor the PBS-listed drugs which could prolong my life. It is infuriating. Like all rare cancers, there are simply not enough people to warrant a trial or to gather meaningful data, and by definition, there never will be. So currently, I have to offer up our family savings to buy a trial drug myself. It is keeping my disease stable, but it's costing us $12,000 a month. I have two beautiful daughters, Lilith 8 and Willow 6. Neither of them can remember a time when they weren't being stalked by this frightening invisible monster that sometimes makes their mummy so sick she can't move. My beloved husband Kevin has had to take a step back from the job he loves as an actor to care for me, to lift me when I can't stand, to comfort me when I wake up screaming in the night, to nurse my grief for what's lost. It is so cruel that my ovaries, the tiny organs that helped engineer the miracle of my daughter's birth, are also the cradle of the disease that could take me from them. Nobody in this room knows when you're going to die, but I've got a better idea than most of you. And the only thing scarier than waking up to that every day is the thought of my daughters having to withstand the worst blow that can happen to a child. The mental torture of this disease is often worse than the physical torture. I can't even imagine what it would have been like 20 years ago, a time when there was no Ovarian Cancer Australia at the other end of the phone, none of their support groups for women like me. When you tell people you've got ovarian cancer, there's this face they get. I call it the ovarian cancer gaze, an expression of compassion, fear, and pity. Sometimes people can't even meet your eyes because they think they know what your story is, or more significantly, how it ends. A doctor even once said to me, "This is just the story of ovarian cancer. This is what happens." Well, quite frankly, that's not good enough. It makes me want to scream because we can change the story. 30 years ago, women like me were getting the breast cancer gaze. Now, when someone tells you they have breast cancer, what do you say to them? You say, "You can beat this. It is not a death sentence. There is hope. Let's get to work." I want to hear someone say that to me. As an IVF scientist, I have the good fortune of being scientifically literate, so I have been able to explore treatments myself. This is prolonging my life, and every month, God, every extra hour is precious. But what about the women who live in regional areas or don't have family support or aren't as literate in the world of health science as I am? I am so scared for these women. They need help. We all need help. Ovarian Cancer Australia is doing everything they can to offer that help. Thank you. I have seen glimmers of hope over the past 4 years since being diagnosed. More drugs on the PBS, more funding for research, and for the wonderful Teal support program. For all this progress, thank you. Research-wise, we are on the cusp of significant advances, but we need true collaboration. We need leadership. We need more funding. And when you make decisions here in Canberra, it does make a difference. Excuse me. It's always quite emotional getting up here and sharing my story. The power of human ingenuity has never been more in evidence. At this breakfast last year, imagine if I'd stood here and said, "Prime Minister, Health Minister, this year you will lead the world in withstanding a global pandemic for which a vaccine will be developed and distributed within a single human gestation period." The word impossible has never meant less. In the last year, a scary, strange year, I saw our country come together to achieve impossible things, and it gave me that ever-elusive hope, because it told me that we can change the story. We can change the story of ovarian cancer. To think about my daughters reaching adulthood, adolescence even, without me is unbearable. To know that they will reach adulthood in a world where ovarian cancer is not a death sentence would be something to hold on to, and that is why I'm here in front of you this morning. I stand before you today because I am still here and I still have a voice. There are so many who don't anymore, like my brave, every time I practice this, I cry this time. Late friend Jill Emberson, the founder of Pink Mix Chill, who spoke to you 2 years ago. And there are so many of these courageous women you don't hear because they're just too sick or scared whilst battling this cruel disease. Please hear their voices in mind. Decisions made in this building can and do change the course of history. Please help us change the ovarian cancer story now. We don't have much time. Please help me change the story for my Lilith and Willow. Thank you.
We're looking after mummies because you got cancer. I am helping her.
So anything you want to say to mummy?
Hello. Babies, we miss you very much and we hope you get better now.
Best doctors in town.
If anyone else has cancer, can't see Daddy, help them.
It's a good offer to the world. Anyone with cancer, Dr. Bliss will sort you out.
And we'll love it. We really, really miss you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for sharing your powerful story. I wouldn't think that there'd be a dry eye across the country. It isn't easy speaking about something so raw and so personal in such a public space. Because of your strength and advocacy, we hope that we'll be able to tell a different story here one day. Next, I have the pleasure of welcoming the Honourable Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Caitlin. Can't put it more simply than that. But I'll return to that just in a minute. Can I acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, their elders past and present and emerging? Can I acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues who are here with us today? Of course, the Leader of the Opposition, Anthony Albanese. To you, Jane, and to you, Marina, thank you for the amazing job you do in leading this tremendous organisation in your search for hope. And to all the women, wherever you are, here today, or perhaps watching, or hearing this later, fighting with their families, with those who love them, with those who are caring for them, turning up every day, supporting the treatments, being there to hold the hand later, fighting together every single day for something incredibly precious, the most precious gift of all things, and that is life. We've heard now from Caitlin. We look at Heaven and Lilith and Willow. We can all tell stories of inspiring parents, Lilith and Willow, that have impacted our lives. I know my colleagues can tell those stories. But I tell you what, I think you top it in the way that you can look at your mother and her tremendous courage and what she has done here today. We've heard her passion, her strength, her determination, her caring nature. We've seen her tears. And we've shed a few, I'm sure, this morning, as others have at so many other times. She walks in the footsteps of other very courageous women who have come here, and many of us who join here today have done so for many years now. Remember here 2 years ago hearing from Jill and from Kristen, talking with them, seeing their courage and that emotion. They are terribly missed. The memory of that day stays with me, and I'm sure all who've made this an important part of our involvement here in national life. The legacy lives with us not just this day of your message, but each and every day. And you're right, Caitlin, the past year for the country has been extraordinarily difficult, and amazing things have been achieved. We've all learned something about ourselves over the course of the past year, and we're still learning. We've done it separately, individually, but we've also done it together. And we have learned that we are a little bit stronger than we perhaps thought we were. But I'm sure that's something you discover each and every day. We've learned about the incredibly talented people in our medical research sector in particular, and how they've been able to accelerate and drive change when supported. And the focus, while it has been on COVID, the lessons learned apply to every endeavour in medical research. One of the things we've all experienced in the past year was the joys and frustrations of Zoom and remote meetings. We all at some point had problems with the mute button. One of the people I met remotely was Jacinta, who lives in the Shire in my own electorate. It was the first time we'd interacted, and we got on really well. On her 59th birthday, Jacinta was diagnosed with a serious ovarian cancer that had already spiralled into her bowel. It was a terrible shock. Her symptoms had only been around for a matter of days. There she was, living a normal life, a wife, a proud mum of 2 adult children. Then bang, she was thrust into 2 major surgeries and gruelling rounds of chemotherapy. And that's the diabolical thing about this cancer. As you all know too well, by the time you know about it, it has already got a head start. One minute you're thinking about making school lunches, getting to work, going to the office. The next minute, none of that matters anymore, as your doctor lays out what lies ahead of you and the grim challenge you face. I'm speaking to Jacinta because she is one of the beneficiaries of one of those decisions that are made in this place. Shared decisions by all members of our Parliament, which was to expand access to Lynparza under the PBS. As you say, it's a life-changing medication. It'll help a further 300 Australian women each year. Each course would normally cost around 140 grand. And because of that decision, Lynparza now only costs $40, as we know, and $6.60 on the concession card. The listing of life-saving and life-changing medications on the PBS is one of the proudest achievements, I think, of any government. This is why we have advanced societies. This is why we have advanced economies. This is why we have institutions of government. This is why we pay taxes to do these things. But as you've reminded us, progress we have made is still not complete, and there is still a very long way to go. Jacinta was able to tell me she'd been able to return to work, and she's back running and can once again enjoy her husband Oliver's wonderful cooking. And best of all, she told me she can laugh again. She's still doing well, and she has reminded me we have to look to the future, as Caitlin has also here this morning. So we must increase our efforts. The challenges you've set down this morning, Caitlin, I'm happy to take up, as we have in the years that have led up to this time, and I know that burden will be shared by the others who join me here today. We make progress, but there is more to make. We are the single biggest funder of cancer research in Australia as a government. We've invested more than $71 million in ovarian cancer research through the National Health and Medical Research Council, and we're supporting the sort of high-quality research that will improve diagnosis and treatment, as well as our understanding of its causes. As was noted earlier, Jane, some $16.9 million from the Medical Research Future Fund has been invested in groundbreaking ovarian cancer projects, like the work done by Ovarian Cancer Australia. We're also supporting that fantastic Traceback project, which identifies and offers testing to women and their families not previously tested for BRCA1 and 2 gene mutations associated with breast and ovarian cancer. And we've been proud to fund the ovarian cancer case management pilot, which we announced at this breakfast 2 years ago, and which has led to the Teal support program. That pilot means that if you're diagnosed with ovarian cancer, you can have access to support and care no matter where you live, and you rightly make the point about those living in regional parts of the country. Throughout what can be a terribly harrowing journey, this access has never been more important. Around 200 women across Australia are getting that help right now, and I'm pleased to announce today that we're providing an additional $1 million to extend the pilot for a further 12 months. But we'll keep going. We'll just keep going, because we want you to keep going. To Ovarian Cancer Australia, in this year, your 20th, you are everything that is being expected of you. And I know your work is greatly appreciated, and I thank you for the great work you do. It's a pleasure to be with you supporting this vital cause. I'm sure my colleagues agree that we have a great privilege to do what we do each and every day in this place. We have the privilege of meeting Australians from every walk of life, dealing with the full gambit of challenges that people face in their daily lives. We meet them here in this place. We meet them out there across our land. But I've never seen more courage than the women who have spoken from this podium each and every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and also to our Federal Health Minister, Greg Hunt, for that fantastic announcement. It means so much, Prime Minister, to all of the women across the country with ovarian cancer, and it will help Ovarian Cancer Australia to ensure that women don't walk alone. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Anthony Albanese.
Well, thanks very much. I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and I pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. I acknowledge the Prime Minister and all my parliamentary colleagues who are here, Jane Hill and Marina Go, for your leadership of this organisation. But today, I think it's fair to say that the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Labor Party and ministers and everyone else have taken very much a backward seat to my constituent, Caitlin Delaney. That was a brave, courageous, extraordinary, moving speech that you gave. Speech is almost not the right word. It was an extraordinary contribution, and certainly you moved me and you moved everyone who will hear that message. And to your wonderful family, my two of my young constituents here, Lilith and Willow, welcome to my workplace. I do enjoy going to Stanmore Public School, to your workplace. Study hard, and your mum and dad, I know, are very proud of you. So to Caitlin, Kevin and the girls, and to Caitlin's stepmother Carol, who's also joined us here today, you are very welcome, as is everyone who's joined us here today who's living with ovarian cancer. For more than a year now, of course, we have been swamped by the pandemic. And as Caitlin said, it has shown exactly what is possible in such a short period of time, where efforts are concentrated, where resources are given, and where politics and things that divide us from time to time are put on aside to really make a difference and to have that determination. We come here together to celebrate as well 20 years of this organisation. During that time, it's been particularly difficult over the current period. Calls to the OCA helpline have doubled, and that's an indication that for people who are going through difficulties, the period of the pandemic, difficult for everyone, has been more acute because of the lack of interaction that has been necessitated by this dreadful pandemic. This organisation is doing a wonderful job of raising awareness. We know that there is no early detection test, and we cannot say this often enough. All women have to know what the symptoms are. Ovarian cancer does not give generous odds, and that's why we're so humbled by Caitlin's words here today. A good friend of mine who I grew up with was Bridget Whelan, who was also a major activist in this organisation. Bridget was brilliant, smart, passionate, committed to making a difference in this place and in her advice also in New South Wales politics. When she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, she turned her political skills to raising awareness, not so much for herself, but for others, and she certainly made a difference. We look forward to the day, and I pledge whatever support to the Prime Minister in terms of a bipartisan support for whatever funding and action can be taken. We look forward to the day where we don't need strong voices like Caitlin's to cut through, to raise awareness and to make a difference. But we thank you today, because today you have made an extraordinary difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Albanese, and it's great that ovarian cancer can be seen as a bipartisan issue, and we want it to command the attention that it deserves. So thank you. I'd now like to introduce the Chair of Ovarian Cancer Australia, Marina Go.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you to the Prime Minister, Minister Hunt, Mr Albanese, and all the members of Parliament who have joined us here today. Your presence here today, your ongoing commitment to all of those affected by ovarian cancer, shines a significant light on the disease, giving it the serious attention it so rightly deserves. On behalf of Ovarian Cancer Australia and the ovarian cancer community, we are thrilled at today's announcement of $1 million. Thank you, Prime Minister and Minister Hunt. Funding for our TEAL support program will ensure women newly diagnosed with ovarian cancer will have access to their own dedicated nurse, and women who currently benefit will continue to do so for the next 3 years. An announcement like this, when the disease is recognised and provided with significant support at a national level, means a lot to everyone impacted by ovarian cancer. I'd also like to thank Caitlin for bravely giving us an insight into your ovarian cancer experience. Your story is devastating, and unfortunately I was also one of the people who was moved to tears because it's real and we wish it wasn't. I'm sure everyone watching today will be extra motivated to take action as a result of your words, so thank you very much for your time. I've had the honour of attending 3 of these breakfasts in my role as Chair of Ovarian Cancer Australia. I've heard Caitlin's, Megan's, Jill's and Christian's stories. The common theme being a courageous approach on a completely gruelling journey. A journey where, despite tremendous adversity and fear, you chose to stand up and speak for the thousands affected by this disease in the hope of better outcomes for future generations. Well, Caitlin, Megan, Jill and Christian, and the many who have stood before you, it's working. We're starting to see the millions of dollars in government funding needed to change outcomes. Thanks to the federal government for funding our Teal Support program, giving women access to their own dedicated ovarian cancer nurse. On behalf of Ovarian Cancer Australia, I want to express my gratitude to the federal government for the increasing level of support that is helping to shape a brighter future for those living with ovarian cancer. This is our 20th year, as you've heard, and in our 20th year, the priority for Ovarian Cancer Australia is implementing the National Action Plan. Our focus for 2021 is ensuring as many women as possible have their treatment in a specialist gynecological cancer treatment centre, as this ensures they have the best possible outcome. That all women have access to molecular tumour testing so they can have personalised treatment for their disease. And that Ovarian Cancer Australia continues its world-leading psychosocial research to enable it to deliver evidence-based services. As Jane mentioned earlier, we're proud of what we've achieved since our humble beginnings 20 years ago, and we are energised by the significant momentum of the past few years. Still a lot of work to do, but we're getting closer. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Marina, and thank you to all the speakers today. We appreciate your commitment to raising awareness for ovarian cancer, and especially to Caitlin for giving us such an insight into your personal experience. And a special thank you again to the Prime Minister and our opposition leader for joining us in the support of women today. This year, we'll celebrate all collectively what we've achieved, but we're leaving here very excited about what's going to happen next, because momentum is building, and that with the right action, we'll celebrate significantly better outcomes in the next 20 years to come. So in leaving, we encourage our politicians to take action now. Ovarian cancer remains the deadliest of all women's cancers. So we're relying on you to increase research funding and to continue to support Ovarian Cancer Australia as the leader in supportive care. Let's do this for all the women affected by ovarian cancer. Women like Caitlin, who are desperately seeking new treatment options and dependent on our leaders hearing their words and taking action to improve outcomes. As Caitlin said, decisions made in this building can change the course of history. That concludes our breakfast today, and we thank you all for attending.